Hello, everybody, and welcome to Presence. I am Doug King. Welcome to a new year and to a brand new series to kick the year off. And I am very excited about the series that we're about to do. I've been working on it for some time. And I have attached an article that you can see is um, a an article that's just been published. Um, I'm excited because it deals with science and spirituality and the way science and spirituality relates to the biblical narrative and theology. Now, what is this link to this new e-publication? What is this all about? Well, first of all, there is an internal title that I chose once you turn past the cover page, which is The Holomovement as Narrative. So the first question is, what in the world is the Holomovement? What does that have to do with the biblical narrative? Well, we're going to talk about that as we go along here. That's why I wanted to do an introduction to this, so you would know what you were reading and where we were headed with this series. So I'll get to that in a minute. First, I think it'd be very helpful for me to give you the background of events that have led up to the publication that you're about to read. Many of you probably know that for years I've worked with Dr. Kurt Johnson, who is a co-author of this article along with me, and a few others I'll mention in a sec. And Kurt comes from the world of comparative religion. He is also an evolutionary biologist. He has been published in science magazines over 200 times. So there's a high degree of credibility in both world religions and in the world of science. About 10 years ago, he wrote the book, The Coming Interspiritual Age, which I've referred to off and on over the years here in Presence. So Kurt knew in our discussions what we mean by an integral approach to theology. He understood where we were going as Presence, and he's always been a big fan of Presence. So eventually, Kurt nominated me to the Evolutionary Leaders Group. And I've referred to this group before. You can find them at evolutionaryleaders.net, evolutionaryleaders.net. This group consists currently of about 240 people who come from diverse backgrounds: finance, economics, business, academia, the arts, philosophy, psychology, medicine, science, and all of them are writing to audiences from the standpoint of the spirituality that is behind all of those fields. They all have some type of belief in spirituality. And this group recently published a book, which I've also referenced here on this site. And the book that was recently published is The Holomovement: Embracing Our Collective Purpose to Unite Humanity. And again, I've talked about it. So let's get into, okay, what is the Holomovement? What are we going to be talking about in this series? What does it have to do with the biblical narrative? And what does it have to do with my life specifically as I navigate all my own life conditions? Well, first of all, I found out about the Holomovement through various Evolutionary Leaders members. And so I began to study articles about it. And one of the members of Evolutionary Leaders is Oxford physicist Dr. Jude Currivan. Jude is an internationally known author, speaker, and really can discuss all things scientific. The first thing I did was I read her book, Cosmic Hologram. Once again, in the past, I've set the stage for this, and I've mentioned this book, Cosmic Hologram. Well, as I read Jude's work as a quantum physicist, which has always fascinated me, quantum physics, even though I don't come from science, I began to see patterns in the way the universe has evolved. And the Holomovement, that word Holomovement, is a term that was used by quantum physicist David Bohm, B O H M, if you want to do any Googling of his work. Bohm lived in the last century. He was a contemporary for a while of Einstein. He lived longer than Einstein. Um, and it was David Bohm who, in the quantum world, showed the reality of something called non locality. Non locality was proven by math and experimentation to show that you could have two particles removed by thousands of light years that would respond at the very same time to the same stimulus. The thing that turned the tables upside down in science was that this showed there is something beyond time and space. In fact, Albert Einstein called Bohm's work spooky science. And he at first resisted it. Einstein set out to disprove this non locality theory of Bohm, but it was and has been proven since to be a real thing, a real reality. So, what did that lead to? Well, Bohm said basically the universe is made up of two orders, an explicate order and an implicate order. Now, the Holomovement is the constant and continual movement between these two orders. The term holo means whole, meaning both orders are actually interconnected. And you have movement between them, which shows that interconnectivity. So you have a universe of time and space that is one with an order that actually transcends time and space. So I began looking at the movement of these two orders, and I saw some very familiar elements. Bohm described the movement, this holo movement, as a process of unfolding and infolding. There is a source, a transcendent source from which the universe unfolded into forms or things. And there is a process of infolding where everything is infolded back toward the source from which everything came. I'll talk a lot more about this in the series, so just hang in there with me if you will, even if some of this doesn't seem to be too clear up front, and even after you read the article. So there was, in my mind, I saw a process of both informing and transforming. And the entire process seemed to me to be one of becoming. Do any of these terms sound familiar to you? Transformation, becoming. These are elements I've been diagramming for years in our work and approach to an integral theology. And you all know how I did it. I used the Venn diagram. And so I was thinking to myself, is it possible that these same elements could be diagrammed with regard to the Holomovement? So I set about to put the Holomovement with its various elements into a Venn diagram. No one else, to my knowledge, had done this. I've yet to find anyone on the internet. And so subsequently, I showed my work to Kurt Johnson. Kurt brought Jude Currivan, who is an actual quantum physicist, into the discussion. And after the three of us had been talking for a while and had met in some Zoom discussions, Kurt said, "This work of yours needs to be copyrighted. You need to get these diagrams copyrighted," because Kurt knew that I was going to use the very same Venn diagram elements for quantum physics as it applies to the biblical narrative and integral theology. He saw where I was headed with this. And that's why he was the one who said, you need to get this copyrighted. And so this e-publication that's attached is a result, so that all of my work, as Kurt said, can be used by people in theology or can be used by people in science, et cetera, et cetera. In this e-publication you will read, there are actually 8 Venn diagrams that relate to various aspects of the Holomovement. And again, once you've read this, my series is going to take you to the next step, and that's to say, well, okay, well and good. This is the Holomovement. This is the way that works in the Venn diagrams. These are the elements of the Holomovement. What does it have to do with the biblical narrative? Well, the reason I wanted to do this article that doesn't have any theology in it, it's purely a reflection of my using the Venn to describe a quantum physics reality. For me, this sets the stage. And what I wanted was people from science to validate my diagrams. And I wanted people that were actually from science. It would be of no use for me to sit here and say, I think the biblical narrative, this, and this, just like in quantum physics. People are going to look at me and say, what in the world do you know about quantum physics? And they would be 100% correct. And that's why I'm bringing in science, people from science, to talk with me, discuss these ideas, validate them. And what's even more exciting, I'm finding that within the evolutionary leaders groups, there is a lot of excitement over this approach to theology because it matches the unitive nature of the universe itself. Our theology represents a God, a source that now aligns and integrates beautifully with the nature of interconnectivity, relationality, and wholeness. So I'll go through all that as we move along. I'll take these diagrams. I'll go directly to the text of the biblical narrative. I'll go all through the biblical narrative, and I will show how it aligns to the Holomovement, which I'm saying is a narrative in and of itself. In other words, the Holomovement is the narrative of the universe, about the nature of the universe, about the nature of nature. And I'm saying that we should look to, at this point, quantum physics to tell us that the Holomovement is nothing less than the way God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1, the heavens and the earth, easy to take that for granted. But think about it. The heavens and the earth are the physics of God. The very first thing that was reflected about God's nature was the physics of God. For God is the creation. God is, you cannot remove or separate God from the heavens and the earth. And that brings us back to the wholeness and relationality that quantum physics has found in the entirety of the universe itself. So we should not be surprised that in the beginning, God creating the heavens and the earth should tell us that when we scientifically investigate and research the heavens and the earth, that we should find the very same elements of transformation and becoming that we find in the biblical narrative. So we're also going to propose that any narrative about spirituality, anyone's narrative, should either align with the Holomovement narrative of unity and wholeness, or we should see some red flags. Narratives leading to division do not align with the nature of our universe, and therefore they do not align with the nature of God. So I'm sure you'll have numerous questions after reading this. That's okay. I'll be working my way through it over the coming weeks. I don't even know how long this series is going to last at this point. one of the things I'm going to do is have all my co-authors in some way or another in this series as we go along. I will talk to them one-on-one. So I'll talk to Dr. Bob Atkinson, Dr. Kurt Johnson, Dr. Jude Currivan. I may talk to Jude more than once because this is so heavily oriented toward physics, and her expertise in it is absolutely amazing. She has some wonderful things to say about our conscious universe and the spirituality of nature as a physicist. So that's a little bit of background about it. As you read it, again, if you have questions, don't worry about it. We'll get those things answered as we go along. Now, next week, I'm going to be interviewed on the show All Things Connected. All Things Connected. This show is hosted by Dr. Julie Kroll. And I'm going to be on the show with Jude Currivan to talk about this specific article. She also wants to ask questions about and discuss Presence' integral approach to theology. So this is very exciting. The Presence message and what we're doing here with the evolutionary leaders groups is really expanding our message into a diversity of areas with people who have otherwise had really no interest or much interest at all in the biblical narrative. That's what's exciting about it. So next week, I'm going to send out a newsletter. It'll have information about Dr. Julie Kroll and her bio and what she's about in her work, and a link that you can get to when the show is ready. So you can watch that show. That's going to be for next week. Then week after next, I will actually begin our series that's related to this e-publication that I've got for you today. That's going to give you a couple weeks to read this publication if you care to. I think it's like 64 pages. I forget what it is. A lot of that is footnoting and some other things. So I think you should be able to consume a whole lot of that by then. So again, this will set us on course for a series. And I can tell you there are going to be a whole lot of people that come into this series. There are going to be a whole lot of people that come in to the discussions with us, and I'm really excited about that. So enjoy the article, and I will send you the link next week when I'm on All Things Connected, and we are off and running for 2024. Thank you for joining the conversation.